So, hey guys, and welcome to the next session in marketing management. In the previous session, we already looked at consumer markets and buyer behavior. We looked at how a company such as Maggie marketed their own product in a certain way. We also looked at how consumer behavior keeps changing or how to understand it and what factors influence a consumer behavior. We looked at the social cultures or social and cultural factors, the cultural shifts as well as the subcultural factors. We looked at things like religion, which is also a cultural factor or a subcultural factor that affects the same. We also looked at examples of how word of mouth influence opinion leaders around us, online social networks, and family play a role as our social network to affect a person's thought or a person's buying behavior. We also looked at personal factors such as an occupation, age, lifestyle, economic situation, lifestyle, and so on. We also looked at psychological factors which could be based on motivation, perception, learning, as well as belief and attitudes. Followed by this, in perception, we looked at how a person, an individual consumer, can be selectively attentive towards a particular product or selectively distort or selectively retain a particular product in their mind. We also learned the entire five factors when it comes to learning about a product by a consumer. And we also saw how beliefs play a role in the same. So going ahead from this, we last at the in the last session, the last point that we saw was type of buying decision behavior. Now it could be something that is complex where a person is buying something once and they have to make a huge decision to buy it, or a person may feel bad after buying it, or a person may be habituated to buy some product again and again, or a person may go for different products by keeping a variety. So following ahead with this, the next thing that we need to learn about is buying decision process. Now, when it comes to buying decision process, so when it comes to a buying decision process, a consumer goes through a lot of thoughts. A consumer goes through a lot of different phases before the consumer ends up buying a particular product. In this particular session, we will look at what are the different phases or what are the different processes that a consumer goes through before buying a product. So these are the five decision process phases that we have listed out here. That is need recognition, information search, evaluation of alternatives, purchase decision, and post-purchase behavior. So let us look at the first process phase, that is need recognition. Now, when a consumer would like to buy a product, unless the consumer needs or unless the consumer really has the requirement of the product, the consumer will not buy it. I have a perfectly working mobile device. Unless I need or I am in requirement of another mobile device, I will not be looking forward to buy it. So the first phase is need recognition, where a consumer must feel the requirement of a product. So this is the first phase. If the first phase of need recognition is not available, then the consumer would never buy a product. So the major requirement of any marketing part of any product is to make sure that they make the customer feel like yes, there is a need for this product. And to top it off, as always, the product must give value to the customer. Yes, it should not be something like we are making sure that a customer will feel like they need this product, but once they use it, they will no longer need it. Then that defies the whole perspective. So the entire way to make sure is to make sure that the customer needs the product. Once the customer is in need of a product, or once a marketing makes it feel like the customer requires the product, then the customer can go to information search phase. One of the examples for this is when we look at this pandemic era that we are in, we can see that everyone is concerned about health and well-being. So the lot of food products that are sold with an extra tag stating immunity builders. There are a lot of other products which are also sold with a tag stating that these particular products will make sure that there are no germs in your home or something like that. So these are the same products which were sold earlier as well. There was not a particular need for them. But now that they have created a need with extra points such as immunity boosting or things like germ protection, people are more willing to buy it given the current scenario. So this is where unless a customer has a need for a product, the customer will not be buying it. So once a customer has a need for a product, the customer will start searching for information about the products. There could be, let's assume the customer is in need for a new mobile device. The customer's current mobile device broke, let's say for instance. So the customer is in search for a mobile device which can be useful for him. So the customer searches around for what kind of mobile devices are there. The customer searches around what, based on what sort of features are there. The customer will start searching for the information and learning about it. Once the customer has enough knowledge to learn about some product, let's say for instance a customer wants to buy a new car. So once a customer gets information about mileage, about vehicle, about pricing, about the features of a car, about the braking features, about many other features of a car, then the customer will then start to search what products can I get. The customer will start to uh, create a narrow list of products. The customer may have five or six or seven different cars in their mind. So based on these in his or her mind, the customer will start to evaluate which car is better in what way based on the information that they have searched and learned. So first comes need recognition, where the customer has to have requirement to buy the product. Let's say it's a car. Then the customer will search for the kind of information required to buy a car. Once that is done, then the customer will search for all the alternative options that are there for buying a car. It could be Ford, it could be some other car company like Chevrolet, it could be different cars. So the customer will keep all these car features next to each other based on the information learned, information searched. The customer will analyze which is better for them. So based on whichever is the best for their situation, it could be given their age, it could be given their monetary benefit income, it could be based on any factors, it could be based on psychological perception, it could even be based on personal family factors, it could be based on any of the factors that we have looked at earlier. So based on these factors, the customer will decide which one to buy. There comes the fourth phase, that is purchase decision. So once the customer decides to buy that particular product, in this case, the customer has decided to buy that particular car, the customer will start to use it and work further on with the car. So once the customer started to use this car, that is, it is purchased and it is used, the next step is for the customer to have their own behavior, their own attitude, their own beliefs of the car that they have purchased already. Now, this could be something like that the customer has decided to buy this car, they have bought it, and they really like it. So their post purchase behavior will affect other people around them. They will spread the word of mouth. They will also spread opinion stating that I have got this car, I have used it for a month, I have used it for a year, and it is really good. This is something that keeps happening. So this positive post purchase behavior will help the organization. Whereas if the post purchase behavior is negative, the organization may not be sought after by that customer or customers that he or she is in contact with. So this is where during post purchase behavior, communicating with customer and making sure that there is no dissonance, as a point that we talked about earlier, making sure that there is no, as we saw in this particular point about dissonance, that is, once the sale is done, then the customer will start feeling bad about purchasing the product because the customer may not like the product anymore. So, to reduce this dissonance, marketers must make sure they are in contact with the customer. They ask the customer what the customer is feeling. In case the customer does not feel good about the product, the marketers must do something about it. That is, replace them, refund them, or improve their product service, or whatever it could be. So this will help and make sure that the post purchase behavior of the customer will be good. So the post purchase behavior of the customer in this case will be in such a way that Even though the product may not be good, they will give a good service and make sure that you feel better. So once the post purchase behavior becomes like this, the word of mouth and or the opinion spread to other people will still be positive. So following by this, when a customer decides to buy new products, they come under these following categories. Whenever a customer decides to buy a new product, they could be innovative customers, early adopters, early mainstream, late mainstream, and lagging adopters. Most of the customers fall into early mainstream and late mainstream adopters, not lagging. Early mainstream and late mainstream customers. So, what are these customer categories that we have divided into based on their decision to purchase a new product? Let's look at them. So, whenever you find out that there is a new coffee brand, let us assume this, there is a new coffee powder brand, and you are adjusted to one coffee powder brand. You may not be willing to switch to a new one. You are adjusted to one of them. If there is a new product that comes up as a coffee powder, would you be suddenly willing to switch to it? You may not be, because you're used to a certain coffee brand and you would not want to switch it because every morning you're used to that. I'm just giving this as an example. You could take any other for this as an example as well, like could be a toothpaste, could be anything else. So whenever a new product comes up, you're not willing to go towards it. You're not willing to get that product. Only a small percentage of customers are willing to buy a new product. These customers are tagged as innovators. They look to innovate or buy new products. So buy new products. These are the customers which are very less in percentage, somewhere around 5 or 10% at maximum. Then comes early adopters. Early adopters are those who are influenced by innovators, and they are also influenced by features like, okay, this product has come up to the market and it has been in the market for the past few months and people have started to buy it. So it's running well. Let me also give it a try. So early adopters are the ones who look at the advertisements for 2, 3, 4 months, or they see that a lot of people are buying it, and they then begin to buy the product. These are early adopters. Now these also focus of around 10-15% of the entire customer categories. It's not that early adopters and innovators cover the most. They do not. Then come early and late mainstream. Early and late mainstream are sort of similar, but here's the case. When a product becomes huge, when a product goes into mainstream, and you start to feel like, hey, I've been using this coffee powder brand XYZ, and coffee powder brand ABC just came up. It just came up today. I will not buy it, obviously. I'm not an innovator. I don't want to try new products without knowing what they have. I am not an early adopter. Right after 1 or 2 months, I will not go for it. If that product is really good, if it sells so much, if it is marketing so much, if a lot of people like it, only then I will buy it. These are early mainstream people or early mainstream customer category. So early mainstream customer category will buy the product once they see that this product is in major improvement, or in other words, once this product is selling a lot, once this product is marketed a lot. So once they start buying it, once people start buying it in the mainstream, once a lot of people start buying it all around the country or all around the city and everything, once most people start buying it, then others start buying it, the rest of the people. These are called late mainstream. Late mainstream customer category are the ones who look at the product and they see that many people are buying that product, so they decide to buy the product as well. These are late mainstream. Early mainstream and late mainstream together have somewhere around concentration of 70 or 60 to 70% of entire customer category. So this is where most customers fall into. And then the final part is lagging adopters. People who see like, hey, everybody around me are buying it. Pretty much every single person is buying it. I'm the only one who's not buying it yet. Let me go give it a try. So these are the lagging adopters. These again fall into somewhere around 5 or 10% or something like that. So the most or the majority of the customers fall into early and late mainstream. So when a company comes up with a new product, and they are not selling it in the first 2 or 3 months, they need to realize that they are not there for early and late mainstream products, mainstream customers initially. The company needs to create the buzz, the company needs to create a customer value, the company needs to create the idea that a lot of people are buying it and there is a need for this and this product is really good. Some products may hit early mainstream very quickly. Some products may hit early mainstream very late. So there are a lot of things that go into this. Things like the product quality, the perception of the product by the user, and various situations like how well it is sold, what is the marketing strategy, and all of this. These are the categories of buyer decisions of for new products based on their interest. So the next thing we will look at is customer driven marketing strategy. Now, creating value for customers is something huge. Every product must have a good value, unless which the customer would never buy it. If I ever sell a product which has no use, which has no value to you, you would never buy it. So, customer driven marketing strategy is huge in a way that a company should look to market a product to customers by making the customers feel like, yes, this product will provide value to you, or this product will be providing value to a customer. Only then the customer will be willing to buy the product. Unless the customer feels that they will gain a value by buying that product, the customer will never buy that product. For instance, there's a vehicle which is based on petrol, and if the petrol price is way too high in a particular city, the customer may not be willing to buy it. The customer may be willing to buy an electric vehicle instead. So, unless you are looking at what customer feels a value is, you are not marketing it properly. So, we will look at the next session that we are going to do right now, the next part of this session, from this perspective as to how customer driven marketing strategy is done and how companies get the best out of it. So, to do this, here's what a lot of companies do. Earlier on, a company used to sell a product by marketing only that product for everyone together. If there was a phone sold, a company would market that phone for everybody on earth. Now, you cannot market one product to everyone. You cannot do such mass marketing. A person who's 20 years old and a person who's 40 years old, a person who's 70 years old may not be willing to buy the same product whatsoever. So, in order to make sure that the company is selling their products to a certain set of customers, by making sure that the company is targeting a certain set of customers and selling the products only to them, to make sure that they are targeting the right set of customers. This is what companies generally do. Their marketing strategy involves these 4 points: market segmentation, market targeting, differentiation, and positioning. Let us look at these 4 points one at a time. So, market segmentation is where companies segment. In other words, companies divide a market into smaller set of markets which are the kind of exact kind of customers that the company is looking for. Let's say, for instance, if a company is selling ice creams, they will not put up ice cream ads for every age. Most of the times, they will put it up for kids. If a company is selling toys, they will put up the advertisements only for kids. They will segment it only for kids. For example, if it's a toys advertisement, it is not put up on a news channel. It is generally put up on a kids television channel. And when it's an advertisement for a product that is required at home, then it is put up in other channels. So this is where, even when it comes to television or anywhere else, generally companies look to figure out which market segment they need to target. It may not just be based on age, it may be based on some personal preference, it may be based on the social status, it may be based on various other things that a market can be segmented. So once a company segments a market into a smaller division, The company will target only that smaller division or smaller set of people, and only they will be provided with advertisements over and over again for buying up certain product. So just to see the point, once a company segments a market, in other words, once a company decides which segment of market are to be focused on, whether it is kids, whether it's people of certain social value, whether it's people of certain personal values, whatever it could be, then they will start to target those segments. If it's a toy store, they are segmenting it only for kids. Once they figure out which market segment to concentrate on, they target those market segments and start to provide advertisements to them. These advertisements could be through television ads, these advertisements could be through magazines, it could be through anything else. So once they provide that, then they start to create a differentiation, because they know that the customer will be going through a lot of different advertisements. So they want to make sure that whatever they give as a product is different from other products, is differentiated, is superior from other products. They may add a glowing light to the toy, they may add something like a color, different color, a sound, a music to the toy, could be anything. They look to differentiate their products to attract the customer. Once they do that, they then position themselves in a market. In other words, they create an image of their own company in the customer's mind. So, to perform all of this, we need to start with market segmentation. So, one of the first things we need to look at when it comes to market segmentation is that it reduces the risk of ineffective campaigning. In other words, if you're marketing toys to everyone, when you're marketing toys even to older people or middle aged people, they will not be buying it. It's completely ineffective marketing campaign. There is no point in investing so much money and time to market a product to a segment of market which will never buy it. That is an unsuccessful and ineffective marketing campaign. So when you segment the market and target only certain customers, that market segmentation has made your marketing more effective, more time efficient, more money efficient, and more resource efficient as well. So this is where we come to the second point. That is, by making sure that we have a target market and we segment the marketing targets into a group, segment the customers into a group, instead of like uh, marketing to each customer individually, since we have created a segment, we can market to the entire segment equally. Now, this will help the entire organization to save their money and to market in wholesale, or in other words, bulk marketing for a set of customers. And all of these customers will have similar traits because they will be from the same marketing segment. So when we start dividing a market into different segments, we can divide them based on the following four different ways. We can divide a set of customers based on their location. This is called geographic segmentation. We can divide a set of customers based on their age and their gender, their demographics. That is called demographic segmentation. We can also divide or segment the market based on the behavior of the customers, as well as based on psychographic. In other words, personal feelings or personal attitudes of the customers as well. So let us look at these one at a time and how they help a company in segmenting them, and what is the benefit of market segmentation entirely. So when we talk about geographical marketing or geographical market segmentation, we are dividing the market into many geographical units. It could be a different country, it could be a smaller region, it could be a state, it could be small counties or cities or anything. Now, you may be wondering, why would we need geographical marketing segmentation? Because when we sell something like toys, it does not matter which location. We have to segment it based on the age. We have to segment it to kids. So what's the point in geographical marketing segmentation? What's the entire point in it? To understand this, let's take a couple of examples. The first example is clothing industry. When it comes to example of clothing industry, let's assume that a company is manufacturing woolen cloths which are required for colder temperatures. So when they market that, they would be looking at cities, states, countries, or regions, whatever it is, if it's international or national. They will be marketing it, or they will be segmenting their market only to people who live in colder climates, not people who live in hotter climates. When it is people who live in hotter climates, there is no point of them buying a woolen cloth. So if they do market it for everyone, including the people who live in a hotter climate, it's again mass marketing. It's not segmentation. So in this mass marketing, most of the marketing done in hotter climates is useless and completely ineffective. So it's a waste of time for marketing, it's a waste of money invested for marketing, and so on. So this is where the market segmentation geographically is pretty much important. One more example for this is, if you look at some places which are more prone to rainfall, which are more prone to places where there is a lot of dry roads, it's not really well made cities, they will be looking to buy vehicles which are capable of going through such roads. They will not be looking to buy vehicles which can go smoothly on a flat tar surface. So in this example as well, certain cars will appeal to certain locations more. So there are a lot of such examples that can be taken to look at how geographically segmentation of customers can be performed. So to understand this, we see that when it comes to geographical market segmentation, we divide the customers into different categories based on the area where they live in. So it could also be that in certain regions, the language that they speak may be different. So segmenting should be done in such a way that marketing should be done in different languages. Or there may be some specific rules in different locations. So marketing should be done in a different way based on those rules as well. So there are a lot of such examples, such requirements when it comes to geographical marketing segmentation. Another example that we can take up is the difference between sports. An instance of this is, in United States baseball is more popular, and in India cricket is more popular. So when sports equipments are marketed, they would have to look at these locations in specific, because they cannot market cricket a lot in USA and they cannot market baseball a lot in India, because it is essentially almost non-existent. So this is where companies need to look at, in different locations, what do people like in order to market their products. So this is one example, along with a clothing company example that we took earlier, where companies need to look at different geographical locations and figure out whether people would buy a certain product or not buy a certain product, and segment the customers accordingly and market the product only to those segments who will be willing to buy. So going ahead with this, the next kind of segmentation that we have is demographic segmentations. This is the most common way to do any segmentation by companies. So we often know this, that this involves things like age, gender, whether a person is married or not, how much members do they have in their family, what job do they do, how much have they studied, their education level, what is their income? Is it high? Is it low? Are they from a different race? Are they all from the same race? What is their nationality, religion? There can be many such things we can take up to get demographic data of people. Now, demographic data is often obtained through public census. It can easily be obtained as secondary data from public census by a company. They do not have to go and ask surveys individually to people. It is easily obtained as well. So this is why it is one of the most common forms as well. So an example for this is, when you have some deodorants, you know that deodorants are different for men and women. They are marketed as a separate product for women and a separate product for men. So this is where a deodorant is taken up as an example of how demographic segmentation is done. Whenever you look at deodorant or fragrance advertisements, you see that it is most often a completely separate product for men and completely separate product for women. So this is where they do segmentation based on gender for this one product, and they market to only that segment. Now there is not much of a point if they market a woman's deodorant to a man and a man's deodorant to a woman. So they have to market it in a certain way. So going ahead with this, the next example that I would like to take is automotive companies, in other words, vehicles. So whenever a company is looking to sell vehicles, they look at the customer's income. Does the customer make enough money? Then yes, let us give him a mid-range brand. If the customer does not make enough money, let us give him an entry-level brand. If the customer makes a lot of money, let us give the customer a luxury brand. So this is where vehicle industry or automotive companies segment their market based on the income, and based on the segmentation they market different products to those segments. This helps them market efficiently as well. So this is also one of the examples. Apart from geographic segmentation, demographic segmentation also helps a company into divide their customers into different groups, so that they can market their products to one of the groups that they want to target. So the next one is called behavioral segmentation. This is the third category. Behavioral segmentation is where, so behavior may be something like, take this for an example. You are right now going through a website. The moment you go through a website like Amazon and you start searching for mobile phones, they track that, they realize that your behavior right now, as of today, is that you are looking for a particular product. You're looking for a mobile phone. So when you go through any other websites, the same advertisement comes up. They know your current behavior and they're segmenting only you, personalized, and they're marketing it to you. Or you could also get a call later on saying that, hey, you were browsing our website to search for a mobile phone. Do you want an extra offer? Do you want this? They will ask you things. So these are some examples of behavioral segmentation. Now, when it comes to behavioral segmentation, it could be any of these. One of them could be online shopping habits. When you go online and start searching for a certain product on a weekly basis, monthly basis, or only for now, that is tracked and the same will be marketed to you, and you will be segmented for that product. So this is one example. We often see this a lot. I go and search something on a website. The moment I go to a different website, I'm getting that exact product in the different website. And the second example is actions taken on a website. The example to take up for this second way, the example to take up for this is, let's say you put an object in the cart in a website. When you put an object in your cart, it's not yet sold, it's still there. The website will think that you've put it in the cart, but you now have second thoughts whether to buy it or not. That's why you're not buying it. So that website will send an email to you, you have left something in the cart. Or that website will send an email to you, you have left something in the cart, you have not bought it, we will give you 10% discount. Or that website will provide you some other such data. So this is where you have taken action on a website, like putting something in a cart, and they're taking action by reverting back to you by segmenting you as a particular customer and targeting only you. This is one example. So likewise, there could be benefits sought by the customer. The customer may think that what do I benefit from this product? And the company has to provide justification for it. Or it could be usage rate, or it could be loyalty. When it comes to loyalty, a customer has to be buying something from the same company again and again and again. When a company keeps having the same customer have repeat purchases, the company would be willing to provide that one customer little extra discount or little extra incentive. Like there are a lot of coffee shops which recently opened, and they started giving an option like, buy 10 coffees with us, you get the 11th one for free. So examples like these are where they segment you based on your loyalty behavior. So when you're loyal to the organization, when you're loyal to the company and you're buying again and again, they give you extra discounts. This is one such example. So the last case that we have is psychographic segmentation. Psychographic is somewhat similar to demographic, but psychographic segmentation deals purely with emotional behavior of a customer. So, when a customer has some emotional behavior, things like the customer's motives or the customer's preferences or any such thing, or a customer's personality or belief or attitude or faith, all of these are something that are psychological. So these individual traits that are only individual to a particular customer are called psychological or psychographic traits or characteristics. So these are what are focused on to segment customers. Now, we may be wondering, how do we segment customers based on their personality? How do we segment customers based on their interest or belief or faith or values or attitudes or lifestyle, whatever it could be? How can we segment our customer based on their emotional and mental characteristics, based on their personal preferences? To look at this, let's look at a few examples. One of the examples, as I wanted to discuss, is a furniture company. Let us assume that there are a few people in their mid 20s and early 30s age who are getting married. So, if their income is a lot, they would probably require new furniture. So, other people who are in same age will not be looking for good furniture. Only those who are married right recently and have a lot of income and they want to buy furniture will be looking for it. So this is one way where the company will be looking at personal traits of these people and segment only them. Another way where this is segmented when it comes to psychographic segmentation is based on lifestyle of people. That is a person willing to spend a lot? What is their lifestyle? Do they like to spend a lot on their leisure time? Do they not? What are their beliefs? What are their values? What is their faith? Are they buying these kinds of products from their ancestral times? What are those such cases? To understand and take an example of this, you can look at two cities, for instance. Let us assume that one city has a history of all natural made things, another city has a history of all scientific based things. So when you look at these two examples, the first city may be the customers of first city may be willing to buy, let's say, a toothpaste or something like that, which is more based on natural things. For instance, environment based things like some tree leaves or something. Whereas the other city customers who are more willing towards only science may not be willing towards these and would be willing towards the most chemically perfect compound. So this is just one example that I'm providing. There could be a lot of such examples when it comes to psychographic segmentation. So following psychographic segmentation, the last one that we have is called value segmentation. This is how a lot of companies take up a customer's value or a customer's worth. See, just like a customer looks for a value in a product that they buy from the company looks at the value of the customer as well. If the customer keeps buying a lot, if the customer makes a lot of purchases, then their value is high. If the customer does not make a lot of purchases within a company, then their transactional worth or their value towards the company is not as high, it's a little lower. So, based on such a value of a customer, a company often segments those customers and provides different sort of marketing to them. An example for this is where companies look at the worth of the customer. If the customer has made a lot of transactions earlier on with the company, something similar to loyalty in behavioral segment. When a customer has made a lot of transactions with the company will look to perceive that the value of the customer is higher, and that customer will be targeted because they know that that particular customer is willing to buy a lot. Since that customer is willing to buy a lot, their worth is high. The company will target that customer with all higher paid products or higher cost products. When a customer's value is low, their transactional worth towards a company is low. The company will target those customers or segment those customers to target them with products which cost lesser. This is one small instance. Now, to note this, the major four segmentations are geographic, demographic, behavioral, and psychographic segmentation. The other segmentations that we are looking at from value segmentation are further types of segmentation which are not a part of major four, but they are still used by a lot of companies. There are much more ways to segment, there are much more segmentation techniques, but we are only going to look at these major ones. There is one more that is called firmographic segment. Firmographic segment usually works in B2B. So, firmographic segmentation is where companies target a company or a business or a market is essentially a company itself. In other words, there is a company which requires software solutions. So, us, if we provide software solutions, we're going to segment that company and target only them. Or there is a company which requires certain mechanical products. If we are selling it, we look at that company name and we target such companies only. This is not based on certain demographics, this is not based on psychological, psychographics, or behavior. We are targeting a company as a whole because a lot of employees in that company would require our products. For example, there's a huge garage chain. So, in that garage chain, people would require rugged clothes because of their work place. So, if we are selling very rugged, rough clothes, we can target that company directly and sell a lot of our products to them. So, this is an example of firmographic segmentation. So, like this, there are a lot of different segmentation methods apart from the four major methods. Another one, for instance, is seasonal segmentation. This is where people buy different products in different seasons. Like, for example, when it comes to Christmas and Hanukkah or something like major festival times, their purchasing behaviors are different. When it is non-festival times, the purchasing behavior are different. So, like this, lot of toys are purchased during festival times to give as gifts. Lot of products is purchased as gifts. So, we can see that based on season also there is segmentation. This is just one major holiday as an example, one major festival as an example. Another seasonal segmentation example we can always take up is a simple case of food items. Certain food items are bought during summer, certain food items are bought during winter. So these are certain examples again just for seasonal segmentation. So now further from this, in our next session, we will see what targeting is and how to work with market targets. But before doing that, let us look at why marketing segmentation is required or why segmentation of a customer base or segmentation of a market is needed. What does it help with? So the first example to take up is that it improves campaign performance. We already looked at this earlier on. Without segmentation, when you're marketing the product to everyone, there's a good chance that some of the marketing is waste. It's completely useless because you're marketing it to customers who would not buy such a product at all. So this is where you can improve campaign performance or you can improve your marketing performance by spending more money on segmenting and spending less money on marketing to those people. So when you have segmented, you can market only to them. You don't have to spend extra money to market to other people or so on. This is one of the major benefits of market segmentation. So the second benefit is informs product development. Now, let us think of this for an instance. We are an automobile company and we are creating vehicles. So we just got to realize that we should market on youth segment. We should market on people who are between 20 and 30 age who would like to buy such a car. That is who we want to market. So when we realize that we are marketing people aged between 20 to 30, we then realize that we can convert our product which we are marketing into more youth friendly. We can add more features into our product. We can add more parts to our product which that youth, which that segment may like. So when we add more things that a particular segment may like to a product and we are selling that to the same segment, that is hugely beneficial to the company because the chances of them buying it will be increased. Let's say, for instance, we are selling vehicles only to youth and we market it to youth. We would take a little survey on what they would like in their vehicle. A lot of such people may say we would like to have a really good stereo system, we would like to have a really good color system, we would like to have it look very nice with a lot of designs. So when we look at these ideas, we can have a really good stereo system, a different set of colors, a nice design, different kind of lighting system, LEDs or whatever it could be, and we can sell that product to the same segment. And since we are marketing it to the segment, and based on the segment that we are marketing to, we are getting feedback of what they like, what that segment likes, and improving our product. That segment is more willing to buy it because it has more and more things that they want. So, this is one huge benefit of market segmentation. And other benefit of market segmentation is it provides areas to expand. Now, to understand this with a simple example, let us go back to our previous case, automobile. We have a vehicle which the youth demand, which the youth are really liking. So, we are targeting the segmentation in terms of demographics between 20 to 30. So, based on them, we have improved our product as well. That is informed product development. Now, when we look at the factor that we are selling these vehicles to youth, we are selling these vehicles to young people, we see that it gives us some ideas that we can expand our products as well. We can expand our product line as well. When we get to know that the young people may want two separate variants of this car. Some young people may want variant 1, which has certain kind of features. Some other people may want variant 2, which has certain different kind of features. It could be based on the income that they have. So based on this, we can expand our product development. We can expand our organization to build those two variants of the product, one for people with more money, another one for people with a budget. So based on this, we have expanded our own product into different products, and we can use those new products to again market back or to again market it to the same segment. So this is how market segmentation also reveals areas to expand. One more example for this is we are marketing certain products to kids, certain toys. So when kids like those toys, they feel like it could be improved because even kids have their own feedback that it's not fun enough, it's not nice enough, it does not have music or something. It helps our organization get areas to expand or to create new products or to inform new products entirely towards the customers. So the final advantage is when we segment our customers or when we market it to one segment, we realize who we are marketing it to. We realize for whom we are developing these products. So based on that, we can improve the focus of our business only to those segments because we know to whom we are marketing. If we don't know to whom we are marketing, we need to put all kind of features in our product, which is not possible. So when you have a focus that we are focusing on this kind of market segment, when we are focusing on these kind of customers, we can improve our company and product and marketing way only for these kind of customers. So these are the huge benefits of market segmentation. So with this, we are able to understand that yes, market segmentation is hugely needed. Whatever product it may be nowadays, market segmentation is hugely needed. So once we segment it, we will then see in our next session how to target those customers and how to differentiate our product. Finally, before the session ends, there is one more point, that is market segmentation effectiveness. A market segmentation is effective only when it follows these 5 points. If you're not following these 5 points completely, your market segmentation may be a failure. There may not be a point in segmenting a market into what you have done. One, the market segmentation must be measurable. You need to know exactly how and why it is segmented. Second, you need to be able to access that segment. You need to be able to trade with that segment. Third, they must be substantial. In other words, they must be profitable. Fourth, they must be differentiable. You must be able to differentiate that segment with other segments. If two segments are, if there are two segments who are both same people but with different names, then you're losing out on one set of customers. So all segments that you've created must be differentiable, and you should focus on some of them. And finally, to focus on some of them, when you have divided into a segment, it must be actionable. You must be able to do something with that segment. You must be able to sell products to that segment. So, unless these five parameters are there, a market segmentation isn't completely effective. So, with this session, we will end at market segmentation. I will also be sharing a case study with you students regarding market segmentation. We'll look at the next topic in the next session, that is market targeting.